Okay, so for this part of the tutorial, I'll be showing the stamina function of our game, as well as the hazardous obstacles and the damage to our stamina in the system we made. So I'll be using the same project as the last time. As you can see, the capsule placeholder character is still there. The terrain is still this rectangle, but the difference is that I've already pre-added the assets in from for this particular tutorial. So this cylinder acts as the obstacle, and the scripts are also in place already. The scripts are actually still the same from last time. I just added new things to it to represent the stamina and the damage. Also, if you can see here on the bottom, this is the text which is going to serve as the temporary UI, so that players can sort of have like info on how much stamina they have, how much they've lost, the regeneration, etc., etc. I'll quickly show off the game in action. So I'll just play here just to demonstrate how things are. Switch to game. So the character still moves. It's still the same jump, but when it makes contact with the obstacle, you see right there on the top left, the stamina um, was reduced. So if I hit it again, it's reduced again. So each time it makes contact with the obstacle, the player's stamina takes damage by 20 points. And then when the player stops moving, you can see that it regenerates at the top. And then when they move again, it stops, contact, the reduction, then regeneration. Now, as I've said, this is still the same script from the last tutorial, the third-person controller, except that I've added more things that facilitate the stamina, the damage, and the obstacles. So as you can see here, I've added some values that dictate the stamina. So maximum stamina starts out with 100. This also says here, maximum stamina is 100. This is the regeneration rate for when the player is standing still. So it regenerates at 5 per tick. This is the stamina damage. So when as you saw a while ago, when I made contact with the hazard, it shaved off 20 points from my maximum stamina. And this is for the TMP text is for the UI, or the text object in our game earlier that shows the info of the stamina. And then down here, there's also more script. So previously it was just until is grounded, but now there's another boolean is moving. This checks if the player is moving. This is important for the stamina regeneration function. And I've also added this damage cooldown function because without it, every time the player makes contact with the hazard, all their stamina gets drained immediately. So there has to be a cooldown between damage so that instead of losing all your stamina, it's incremental. And if I scroll down a bit, you'll see that there are also a few other changes. So this update stamina UI here, that is a new addition. It's essential for the temporary stamina UI I made in game, and what it basically does is that it's responsible for reflecting the stamina changes. So whether you lost or gained stamina, this will be responsible for it. The update methods down here are still largely the same. You know, this is where all the player input and controls are, except that there's a is moving function now, and what it does is basically it checks whether the player is moving or not. If they aren't moving, well then nothing much else happens. The player is normal. However, if they stop moving, and provided that they lost stamina to some degree, the regenerate stamina function will kick in. The next one down here are the codes for the obstacles or the hazards. So it's an on controller collider hit, and it checks whether the player object, meaning the capsule that I made a while ago, has hit the object tagged as a hazard. It's important to note that this hazard tag is important for the obstacle or the hazard. This is so that the player doesn't lose stamina when it makes contact with something that isn't a hazard. So let's say like a wall or a part of the map. But it's important so that the player does lose stamina if they hit something that should be an obstacle or hazard. So the cylinder that is in the game has this tag, but the terrain and maybe a wall, it doesn't have that tag. So the cooldown coroutine is also here. This is what determines the the cooldown system for the damage so that the player doesn't lose all their stamina in one go. So it's also down here. So on the first hit, it's is taking damage set to true. They take stamina damage. However, after they do take damage, there will be a wait for a few seconds, and the taking damage is set to false. It's not a very long cooldown. It's actually very short. So repeatedly hitting the obstacle as shown a while ago will cause you to lose stamina. However, you will lose it incrementally by 20, which is what we purposely set. So speaking of stamina damage, this is it here, the functions for it. So to take stamina damage, it calculates the damage it takes depending on the maximum stamina and the stamina that I set up here. So stamina damage is 20, so that's how much they would lose per hit from the 100. So it's going to be deducted with this. The regeneration stamina is also here depending on the calculations for the stamina regen. So I set it to I think it was 5. Yes, it was set to 5, the regen rate, so it'll be 5 per tick. And of course, whenever the player loses or gains stamina, the UI will also update, which is important, which is down here. So the stamina text, which is the Text Mesh Pro in-game, it'll update here. Back here in Unity, nothing else much is different. As I said a while ago, the third-person controller script is still the same one from the last time, except for a few additions that I just went over. Probably the newest one or asset that you had to add is the stamina text, which is this one, the UI. This is a stamina text. All you have to do to add this is just right-click here on the hierarchy, go to UI, and then Text Mesh Pro. This is a Text Mesh Pro object, and then everything else is just touching up. So by default, this thing here is in the center, so you can just click on here, hold Alt, and then click on this one to make it go on the top left. You can make it top right, bottom. It all depends on you. You can change the text input to anything. So since for the sake of convenience, I just set mine to stamina 100, which is the maximum stamina that we have. And then everything else you don't really need to mess around with, because all the things that happen with the stamina UI is done through the third-person controller script. Everything is in here, including for the cylinder, which is our obstacle. As you can see, this thing is tagged as hazard. That's really about it. You don't really need to add anything else. The cylinder or the obstacle itself doesn't have a script because it's all in here. So later on we can add more cylinders and then simply just give it a hazard tag, and voila, we have a full map with hazards.
What's up, guys? It's me, Aldrich. I just want to say thank you so much for the support. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And remember to seize the day. Thank you.